You think about this. The wealthiest city in the ancient world, Babylon. It was located in this valley, totally flat, pretty much a desert, not a lot of natural
Yeah.
resources. So you got to wonder, where did all that crazy wealth come from?
Right.
Doesn't seem like it was just good luck or location.
Right.
Makes you think that wealth is something you build.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got to be based on something, some principles. So that's exactly what we're diving into today, these long-lasting, secrets to success from way back when.
I think that's a great point. When you look at really prosperous times in history, they often share a lot of the same basic approaches to money, to building wealth.
Yeah.
And Babylon, I mean, think about it. They didn't have much going for them geographically, but they figured something out about how to create wealth.
Absolutely. And the main source we're using for this deep dive is a book that's been around forever, it seems like, The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason.
Yeah.
You won't believe this, but originally, back in 1926, it was a bunch of pamphlets given out by banks and stuff, and they were all set in ancient Babylon. And Clayson, he used these really interesting parables, little stories,
Right.
featuring this guy named Arcad. Totally fictional, but he used Arcad to explain these timeless financial principles. And honestly, it's resonated with millions of readers since then. And we're going to be looking at some of the big ideas like the 7 cures for a lean purse
Okay.
and the 5 laws of gold. And what's also kind of cool is that the book actually mentions that they found some clay tablets. And those tablets seem to be proof that people were actually using these principles way later in history.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool they found those. That really adds to it, Makes it seem like they weren't just theories,
Yeah,
but like actual strategies that people used and found valuable enough to write down.
totally. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to find those really important and hopefully surprising insights from the ancients on how you get wealth, how you hang on to it, and then how you actually grow it. We're aiming for that aha moment for you, the listener, without getting bogged down in too much information.
I like that. It's about getting to the core.
Yeah.
Those fundamental ideas that were relevant back then, and we'll see, but probably still super relevant today.
So this brings up an interesting question. Could the same ideas that made Babylon so rich 6,000 years ago actually help you reach your financial goals today? The book seems to think so. It says that these principles are basically universal and they never change. Kind of like, I don't know, gravity or something. What do you think about that?
I mean, that concept of things being universal is really at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Human nature, our needs and desires haven't really changed that much. Neither have the basic ideas behind economics. Things are still scarce, and we still all want to be prosperous.
Makes sense. So let's look at how the book starts. We meet these 2 guys, Bansir, a chariot builder, and Kobbi, who's a musician. They both live in the super rich city, Babylon,
Okay.
but they feel completely broke
Mm-hmm.
and discouraged. And their conversation, a lot of people can probably relate to it. They're working hard, putting in the time, but they're not getting anywhere financially. Have you ever felt like that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That feeling of like working so hard but not seeing any progress, it's super frustrating. And it can make you feel stuck.
Yeah, totally. And so what do? Well, they decide to get advice from Arcad, who everyone knows as the richest man in Babylon. It's interesting to note that he wasn't just known for his wealth, though.
Right.
He was known for being generous, too. It wasn't all about hoarding gold.
That's a really interesting point. I think that says a lot about his perspective on wealth.
Yeah.
It shows that he understood that wealth could and maybe should be used to help others, not just himself.
Exactly. And we also find out that Arcad didn't start out rich. In fact, he started out with pretty much nothing. He was a scribe, just writing on clay tablets all day long, working super hard.
Yeah.
But he had nothing to show for it. All his money went to basic stuff, food, clothes, offerings, just gone. But even though he was broke, his desire for something more never went away.
His early struggles, I think, make his eventual success even more impactful, don't you think? It proves that becoming wealthy isn't about, like, being born with privilege or something.
Yeah.
It's about learning the right things and putting
Yeah.
those principles into practice.
Totally. And the turning point for Arcad happens when this moneylender, Alamish, hires him to make a law tablet. And Arcad, he really pushes himself, works all night to get it done on time. And as payment, he asks Algamish to share his secrets to becoming rich. And Algamish's first lesson is so simple but so important. He says, a part of all you earn is yours to keep. This is like the foundation, the first step to fixing a lean purse. Basically, you got to consistently save at least 10% of everything you make.
Interesting.
It's amazing, right? Even back then, the idea of paying yourself first was key. It's not really about the exact amount either. It's about creating that habit, Understanding that some of your work should directly benefit you in the future. What do you think? Is there a small percentage you could start saving today? Something manageable but meaningful?
I love that. That fundamental idea of putting your own financial future first,
Right.
like before anything else, is so important for building wealth. It helps you develop that discipline of saving.
Absolutely. And it's not enough to just save once. It's got to be consistent. Arcad tries this out, saving just one copper coin for every 10 he earns, and he's actually surprised that he doesn't really miss it.
Yeah,
Really shows how flexible our spending habits can be, doesn't it?
it really does. I think we tend to spend whatever we have. But if we consciously save some first, it forces us to be more mindful of how we're spending the rest.
Now, it doesn't happen overnight for Arcad. He doesn't immediately become the richest guy in town, and he definitely makes mistakes along the way. Like, there's this parable about the lost jewels.
Oh.
So he's got these small savings and this brickmaker, Asmor, comes along. Asmor is going to Phoenicia to buy precious jewels, and he makes it sound like a great deal. Arcad, being new to all this, invests all his savings. And guess what?
What happens?
The brickmaker gets tricked, and Arcad loses all his money. It's a tough lesson, one that probably a lot of us have experienced in some form with our own finances, right?
It's a classic mistake, isn't it?
Right.
It shows how important it is to only get advice from people who really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, just because someone is a skilled brickmaker doesn't make them an expert on jewels or investing.
Exactly. Algamish, he's pretty blunt about it, He basically tells Arcad, every fool has to learn, but why would you trust a brickmaker when it comes to jewels? Would you ask a baker about the stars? He's making a point. You need to go to the right sources for information and guidance. Yep. This leads to the fourth cure, which is all about protecting the money you've saved by investing it wisely. And this is key, talking to the experts. So think about it. When you're thinking about investing, who are the brickmakers that you might be trusting without even realizing it?
That's a great question. I think it's about aligning, making sure the people advising you are in line with your financial goals. If you're trying to grow your money, it makes sense to talk to people who have a proven track record of success in that area.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've touched on cure number 1 and cure number 4. So let's go through the other 5 cures that Arcad teaches. The second one is about planning your spending, having a budget. It's all about being clear about what you really need versus what you just want. It's important to take a hard look at where your money is going and then decide which desires are actually important, those things that actually matter to you. And then let go of those impulse buys. And the rule here is to try to live on only 90% of your income. So, looking at your spending habits, where do you see the biggest difference between those needs and those wants?
A budget, it gives you control. It helps you see clearly where your money's going.
Yeah.
And that way you can spend your money on the things you really care about and avoid wasting it on things that don't matter as much.
Now, the third cure is all about making your money grow. It's not just about saving. You have to put your savings to work, make it earn more money.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be sitting there doing nothing.
Right.
Today, we'd call that investing. Putting your money in something that's going to increase in value over time, whether that's because of interest or dividends or just the price going up.
Yeah.
The idea is the same. Your savings shouldn't be idle. It should be making more money for you.
I love that analogy in the book where Algamish says savings are like the seed.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But investing, that's like the water and sunlight that helps that seed grow into a huge, strong tree of wealth.
Perfect analogy. So then we've got the fourth cure, which we talked about, protecting your wealth through smart investments and listening to the experts. The fifth cure might sound a little outdated, but the idea is still relevant today. Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment.
Okay.
Basically, own your own home instead of renting forever. The reason is you're building equity. You own a piece of something valuable instead of just throwing money away on rent.
What do you think, though, in today's world where housing prices go up and down so much, is that advice still as simple as it was back in Babylon?
Well, the real estate market is totally different depending on where you live.
Right.
But the main idea is still true. Building equity in something is better than spending money on rent without any return. Oh. Owning a home can be a good way to build wealth over time, but it's super important to think about your own situation, like how much money you make,
right,
and what the housing market is like in your area. Good point. The sixth cure focuses on the long term. Ensure a future income. It's about planning for when you're older and making sure your family is taken care of financially. And the book even mentions, I thought this was interesting, Arcad's idea of insurance in case of death,
Really?
which obviously wasn't a thing back then.
Right.
But it shows he was thinking ahead. Today, we have all sorts of things for this, like pensions, retirement accounts, and insurance policies.
I think this really highlights how important it is to plan for the long term
Yeah.
and to make sure you're protected in case something unexpected happens.
And finally, the seventh cure is increase the ability to earn. Basically, invest in yourself, make yourself more valuable, learn new skills, gain knowledge, build your confidence, and all of that will help you earn more. And the book says to do this, you got to have clear goals, like a specific amount of gold you want to earn.
Right.
It also talks about paying off debts quickly and taking care of your family. So what about you? What are some skills or knowledge you're working on right now to increase your earning power?
I think your ability to earn money is your most valuable asset.
Yeah.
So always working to improve it is key to building wealth over time.
Yeah.
And having those clear goals, like you mentioned, gives you something to aim for, keeps you motivated.
Absolutely. Okay, so those are the 7 cures for a lean purse. It's like a practical guide to building wealth. But then the book takes it a step further and gives us 5 laws of gold. These are like fundamental truths about how wealth works.
Okay.
And these laws are told through a story about Calabab, this camel trader. He's sharing Arcad's wisdom with his son, Nomasir.
Okay.
The first law is pretty straightforward. Gold comes easily to those who save at least a tenth of what they earn and invest it wisely.
So saving consistently and investing smart, that creates a snowball effect.
Yeah.
The money you save starts earning more money, and then that earns even more, and so on.
Exactly. The second law says gold works hard for a wise owner who finds profitable ways to use it, making it multiply. This is that key idea that your investment should be making more money for you.
All right, so you're not just letting your money sit there.
Yeah.
You're putting it to work, investing in businesses or real estate or whatever makes sense for you.
The third law emphasizes being careful and making informed decisions. Gold holds fast to the cautious owner who invests it under the guidance of men wise in its handling. Again, we see that advice about getting expert help. So when you're thinking about investing, what steps do you take to make sure you're getting good advice?
Being cautious, thinking things through, is super important when it comes to your money. You have to do your research and make sure the people advising you really know their stuff.
The fourth law is a warning about being reckless. Gold slips away from the man who invests in businesses or purposes with which he is not familiar or which are not approved by those skilled in its keep.
Right.
This goes back to Arcad's lesson with that brickmaker and those Phoenician jewels.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that those get-rich-quick schemes are usually too good to be true,
Right.
and that it's best to stick to what you know.
And the fifth law gives another caution. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings, or who followeth the alluring advice of tristers and schemers, or who trusteth it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment.
Both of those last 2 laws are like warning signs, They tell us to watch out for those promises of easy money and to base our decisions on logic and good advice, not on emotions or unrealistic hopes.
For sure. Then there's this other character, Mephethorn, who's a gold lender.
Okay.
Rodan, he's a spearmaker, goes to him for advice. Rodan's come into some gold and he's thinking about lending it to his sister's husband. And Methon's advice is super interesting.
Oh.
He basically says that wealth, it comes with opportunity, but it also comes with responsibilities and sometimes even worry.
That's interesting.
He then tells this parable about a farmer and his animals
Okay.
to show the dangers of taking on other people's financial burdens. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had to lend money to someone? And what did you learn from it?
I think Mecca's advice is spot on. Lending money, it's not just about giving someone cash.
Right.
You have to think about the risk, like whether you'll get it back. You got to consider the person's character, how they handle money, and whether they can actually afford to pay you back.
Yeah. And Mephinon, he illustrates his points by showing Rodan this chest he keeps. It's full of tokens from past loans, some that were repaid, but a lot that weren't.
Oh.
It was a powerful visual reminder that when you're lending money, security is key, whether that's actual assets or the borrower's ability to earn money.
That token chest, it's like a real-world illustration of the risks of lending.
Right.
Methon's giving advice based on actual experience, not just theory.
Totally. And his advice to Rodan, be really careful about who you lend money to, spread it out if you do, And most importantly, focus on protecting and growing your own wealth. He even had this message carved on his chest: better a little caution than a great regret.
I like that.
Now, the book also talks about something kind of unexpected: good luck. It describes a conversation between Arkad and some others, and they basically agree that good luck seems to favor people who take action, people who seize opportunities instead of waiting around.
Okay.
Like, there's the story of a cloth weaver who missed out on a great deal because he hesitated, and then there's a story about a guy who buys animals and delays paying for them, which leads to problems. Arkad's convinced that if you want to be successful, you got to overcome procrastination. Have you ever missed an opportunity because you hesitated?
Good luck. In this sense, it's not just random.
Right.
It's about being proactive,
Right.
recognizing a good opportunity when you see one,
Yeah,
and having the courage to go for it.
exactly. Then we hear the story about Bansir, a camel trader who ends up in huge debt, even becoming a slave because he couldn't control his spending.
Wow.
But his story is really about how he changes. He realizes that his debts are like enemies he has to defeat. And he's determined to go back to Babylon and pay back everything he owes.
Good for him.
His wife, Sira, is a strong Syrian woman, and she plays a huge role in this.
How so?
She basically snaps him out of his slave mentality,
Yeah.
and pushes him to take control of his life.
I like that.
Through pure hard work and some help from Mathon, Bansir figures out how to pay off all his debts. The key message here is so hopeful. It's where the determination is, the way can be found.
That's powerful.
But then the story gets even cooler. They find these clay tablets centuries later that actually lay out Bansir's plan to pay off his debts.
Oh, wait.
10% to savings, living on 70%, and 20% goes straight to debt repayment.
Wow.
It's like a step-by-step guide to getting out of debt.
Mm.
Have you ever had to make a super detailed plan to deal with a financial problem?
That discovery of the plan on those tablets, I mean, it really shows you how to tackle debt.
Yeah,
It's not enough to just want to get out of debt.
right.
You need a clear plan and the discipline to stick to it.
And what's really mind-blowing is that, get this, the book includes a letter from this archaeologist, Alfred H. Shrewsbury. And he actually used Bansir's ancient debt repayment plan with his wife in the 1930s to get themselves out of debt.
Wow. That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing? It really shows how timeless and universal these principles are. They can work across thousands of years in completely different economies.
That's amazing. It proves they weren't just ancient ideas,
Right.
but that they can actually work in the real world even today.
Continuing with the Bansir story, there's also a really interesting story that Sharunada tells to Hadan Gula. Sharunada reveals that he used to be a slave too, and then became partners with Hadan Gula's grandfather, Arad Gula.
Interesting.
We hear about lessons he learned from other slaves: Megiddo, who taught him the importance of working hard, and Zabato, who showed him what happens when you shirk your responsibilities. Sharunada's journey to freedom and becoming a partner came from his hard work and his skill as a baker.
Those stories about the slaves, I think they highlight something really important.
Yeah, what's that?
It's not enough to just be good with money. You have to have a strong character, and you got to work hard. Those are the foundation of real, lasting success.
Totally. And then we find out something surprising. Arad Gula, this wealthy, successful guy, used to be a slave too.
Wow.
It really shows how determination and hard work can change your life no matter where you start. The takeaway was clear. Working hard and doing the right thing are way more important for long-term success than any quick schemes or just hoping for good luck.
I love that. It's about building something real, something valuable,
Right.
through your hard work and your honesty.
And finally, the book gives us a little history lesson about Babylon. It reminds us that it was in this desert area and its wealth wasn't from natural resources.
Right.
It was all created by people, a testament to human ingenuity and using smart principles.
Yeah.
The book emphasizes all the practical knowledge they had, preserved on those clay tablets, everything from business deals to personal finance.
Amazing how much they figured out back then.
And it makes this cool connection between Babylon's huge walls built for protection and our need today for financial security.
Oh, yeah, I see this.
Through insurance, savings, and investments. Basically, the book is saying, yeah, Babylon is gone, but the wisdom they had about wealth is still valuable for us today.
Putting those principles in their historical context is really effective, I think.
Yeah.
It shows that they weren't just some abstract ideas. They were actually the foundation for a whole civilization's success. And I love that comparison to the city walls.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor for how we need to protect our finances today.
Totally. Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into these ancient secrets to success, here's what we've learned. It comes down to a few key things: saving a part of everything you earn, planning your spending carefully, making your savings work for you through investments, protecting those investments, planning for the future, always working to earn more, overcoming procrastination and jumping on opportunities, having the willpower to get out of debt. And always remember, hard work and doing the right thing are the foundation for real, lasting success.
Those core ideas, from the wisdom of Babylon, they've stood the test of time.
Yeah.
They offer a practical and solid path to building financial well-being. It doesn't matter where you're starting from or what your financial situation is right now.
Now, here's a final question to leave you with. Now that you've heard about these ancient success secrets, what's the first step you're going to take to build your own wealth? And what walls are you going to build to protect your financial future? Think about which of these ideas really resonates with you. What motivates you to make a change? Because the path to a more secure, more fulfilling, and happier life, a life where you don't have to worry about money, really starts with understanding and, most importantly, putting these timeless laws into action.
Great question.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.